Now, the Prime Minister is facing cabinet pressure to take new action on reducing migration. Now, that's following the latest net migration figures that show a record high of 672,000. That's according to the Office for National Statistics.
Now, earlier we spoke to Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride to get his view on that.
We accept that the figures are too high, and that's why, for example, recently we announced that in the case of 150,000 student visas, we'd be clamping down on them, bringing dependents in with them. We're putting up the cost of visas, a number of different measures. And the OBR, who are the independent forecasters who look at the kind of impacts of these steps, recognise that this will in itself start to bring the level of migration down. But there is more to be done.
So, is migration spiralling out of control? Well, let's debate that with Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and broadcaster and commentator Fahima Mahomed. Good to see you both this morning. Ben, what do you think? I sort of expect I know what you're going to say.
Well, I don't think it's spiralling out of control. I think it has spiraled out of control, hasn't it? We've had... If you look at the gross numbers, not the net numbers, people always talk about the gross numbers, but from a social fabric perspective of this country, you have to look at what's happening to the underlying constituency of the United Kingdom. And in the last 3 years, we've had something like 3.5 million immigrants come to the UK. That's 5% of the United Kingdom's population. That's a massive turnaround. And the social fabric of the country is bound to be tested with such dramatic movement in people. In the last 25 years, I think we've had more migration to the United Kingdom than we'd had in all of history before that. And I'm not against migration. The interaction of, indigenous British people, for want of a better description, and people from different cultural backgrounds, different heritages, is a very healthy thing. Societies can only evolve and become stronger and better if they have diversity of thought and if they have to interact with people from different backgrounds. But what we've had is unbridled migration at a rate where cultures are not being absorbed into the UK. And as a result, multiculturalism has not become an assimilation of what is best for the strengthening of a homogeneous society. What we've got is multiculturalism being operated in multiple silos across the UK without integration. And I think, we saw this in France earlier this year when an Algerian young man was shot in Paris by the police. And France went up in a blaze of interethnic violence from Marseille all the way to Calais. And unless we're careful, that's going to come to the United Kingdom. We're much less likely to do it. We're much sort of more docile people, as it were, than the French, as we all know. But, that is my big fear. Then, of course, there's all
okay,
the...
well, let's get a word in.
Okay, I think it depends who you ask when it comes to migration. And I think that we have had recent studies and articles in September from the Migration Observatory in Oxford University stating that the higher educated you are, that you would actually be okay with immigration, because it's depending on how you look at it, from which aspect, whether you're looking at it from the race that you allow into this country, whether it's the skilled, whether when we talk about integration, we have so many people that are working in the UK that are highly educated and integrated. In fact, 3/4 of the UK is owned, probably the land even on this building is probably owned by foreigners and immigrants. So that's not an issue. I think that the actual issue is that it's not about the amount of people that are here. It's about why is it a problem that there is the people that are here when it comes to certain maybe minorities, certain cultures and backgrounds.
Well, we've allowed them in. I mean, these are legal migrants, aren't they, we're talking about?
But even the illegal ones, we always brush that all under the same sort of, carpet to say that, when we talk about immigration, it's always about the people that are coming from the boats and they're coming here illegally and they're coming to use it. At the end of the day, we've got to look at also our foreign policy. We've got to look at the cause as to why these things are actually happening.
We had Mel Stride saying that that the government accepts that it is the figures are too high.
But maybe it's also to do with the processing of the actual...
Well, absolutely, but that's what I was going to say. He says on the one hand that, in fact, you put that point to him, didn't you? He says the figures are too high, but these are legal migrants that our rules have allowed in. So why on the one hand, is he saying they're too high? Because it must be his fault.
Well, the government, in, I think, a false pursuit of sustaining GDP and an inability to fix our own broken labour market, has thrown open the doors to low-skilled work. If you look at the minimum wage that you need to achieve in order to get a work visa, it's £26,000. That's more than 20% less than the median wage of the average British worker. So the effect of that is effectively to undercut British workers, keep a lid on wages, give British workers who are already being taxed to hell with a government that's effectively bust, no real incentive to come to work because they don't get adequately paid. We are operating a third world economic, low-skilled economy. There's no impetus for upskilling, for automation, for moving the economy from that sort of low-skilled base into what we should be.
That's not an immigration problem. I think it's about just people in generally who are not really willing to work. At the end of the day, we have a lot of people that want to come here to build their lives. They actually don't want to leave their homes. They don't actually choose to.
We're not talking about people who are...
At the end of the day, regardless of who you think you're talking about, when we are talking about these things about, it's giving more opportunity to the underskilled and taking away jobs from, the people that really need it, it's really...
No, it's not about who needs it.
The trouble is, there are so many different facets to this.
Exactly.
But can I just ask, because we're out of time, technically, I want to ask you both, just briefly, Fahima, in terms of the integration issue, would there be fewer problems in the UK with how we perceive migration if people came in, ended up being more like Ben, because presumably your heritage with a name like Habib, somewhere down the line.
I mean,
but Ben, obviously, if you don't mind me saying, is very sort of westernised. And
well, my mother's born and bred United Kingdom. My father's born and bred Pakistan. So I'm half-half. Yeah.
Well, I am born and bred in South Africa, coming from an apartheid state when I was a child, and coming here, for equal opportunities in the West. So we can't just say just because I look and be in a particular way, you probably won't even assume that I actually was born and bred in South Africa. It's got nothing to do with that. I think integration is about the fact that we just have our own prejudice and we just don't know how to actually understand the world better. And if you're well educated and well travelled, you'll realise
I think that's totally underestimating the extent of the
bias.
No, it's not.
It is, because you
not
have
at all.
Come from a particular thought and frame of mind, then you were obviously going to say,
and this is,
this is how
and this is where the whole point about interacting with other cultures is for diversity of thought. And what you've just tried to do is shut down discussion. What you're trying to say is, if you're not prepared... Can I finish? What you're saying is, if you're not prepared to accept our views in our culture, the way we express them, then it's you who's being bigoted.
We come here and we abide by the law of the land. No one's saying it's got to be our way.
But no one's suggesting you're not abiding by the law of the land. What I'm suggesting is that for a homogeneous, harmonious society, you have to have shared values and you have to come together.
And that is happening.
And it is not happening. We have got multi-ethnic silos, ghettos developing right across the United Kingdom. We saw it with the anti-Israeli marches. We saw it in Leicester a few months ago when ethnic Pakistanis kicked off against ethnic Indians over a cricket match in which England wasn't even playing.
With every culture, every society.
No, we've got to.
It's not just about a minority issue.
No, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. There is an outright assault on Western democracies from unbridled immigration all the way from Europe, the United Kingdom, and the United States.
It just seems like there's just West against the East.
No, it is not.
With certain cultures that are actually favoured more than the others.
It is. That is exactly what it is. That is trying to introduce prejudice into a debate where no prejudice, at least in my mind, exists. This has got nothing to do.
You're the one that mentioned certain cultures and things. I didn't. You're the one that said about that.
I'm talking about the necessity for shared values and a harmonious... No, we do not share values.
This is what debates are all about, and this is absolutely fascinating hearing from you both. But sadly, we really have run out of time now. I'm so sorry.